The Grand Line is almost always associated with chaos. Normally when people talk about the Grand Line, they think about the massive battles, the Yonko clashes, or who the strongest pirate is. But today we are doing something completely different. We are going to stop at a few of the most unique islands Oda has ever created, just to take in the ambience, the architecture, and what it actually feels like just to be there. We are starting our trip at Water 7. When your ship finally pulls up to the massive wooden docks at the base of the island, the first thing that hits you is the scale of it. It doesn't even look like a normal island. It looks like a giant, ancient stone fountain sitting right in the middle of the ocean. There are no roads here. The whole city is built over the water. Instead of grabbing a cab to get to your hotel, you walk down a set of old stone steps directly into the water and head to a local Yagara stand. Yagara bulls are basically giant, friendly seahorses that the locals use to get around. You watch a local owner toss a handful of food to his Yagara, giving it a heavy pat on the head before it swims over to pick you up. You sit back on the wooden bench of the boat and the Yagara pushes off. You don't feel the harsh rocking of the ocean anymore, just the gentle, steady glide through the city canals. As you move through the lower rings of the city, you really get to see how the locals live. Because space is so tight, houses are stacked right on top of each other. You look up and see neighbors leaning out of their windows, shouting good morning to each other across the canal. Someone has a clothesline strung up across the water, hanging their laundry out in the ocean breeze. Down on the stone walkways, local shopkeepers are sweeping the steps in front of their stores, washing away the salt from the morning tide. You pass a group of kids sitting on the edge of a bridge, dangling cheap fishing poles into the canal and laughing every time a boat goes by. To get higher into the city, your boat enters a water elevator. It's this genius system of wooden gates and rising water that lifts you up to the next level of streets. You sit there in the boat, listening to the heavy wooden gears turning and the water rushing in. As you reach the upper rings, the famous Water 7 weather shifts. A slow grey drizzle starts to fall, but nobody panics. The locals are totally used to it. Shopkeepers just casually step outside and roll down thick canvas A-wings over their storefronts. People on the bridges pop open their umbrellas and keep walking. You pull the canvas roof of your boat out, leaning back as the rain starts drumming softly against it. You float past Dock 1, the heart of the city's industry. The galley law shipwrights are on their lunch break. You can see these massive, incredibly tough guys sitting on giant stacks of timber, eating out of lunchboxes, drinking from huge mugs, and laughing loudly over the sound of the rain. It gives this city this great, hard-working blue-collar energy. As evening rolls in, the air gets a little cooler. You drift past small floating food stands, you can hear the sizzle of meat hitting a hot grill, and a vendor hands a massive skewer of roasted aqua meat to a passing boat. The rich, savory smell drifts right into your boat, mixing perfectly with the cool, rainy air. You finally tie your boat up near a local tavern built right into the stone. The windows are fogged up from the heat inside. You grab a seat by the window, order a hot coffee, and just look out over the water. Warm yellow lanterns are starting to turn on along the bridges, reflecting off the dark canals. Far off in the distance, cutting through the rain, you hear a deep whistle of the puffing tom. The sea train is blowing smoke into the dark sky, carrying locals and supplies over the open ocean. You just sit there by the window, completely hidden away from the chaos of the Grand Line, watching the city go to sleep under the rain. We are leaving the rainy canals of Water 7 behind and heading somewhere most people down below don't even think exists. We are going 10,000 meters straight up into the sky. Our next stop is Skypiea. When your ship reaches the clouds and finally settles onto the white sea, the very first thing that you notice is the air. Because you are so high up, the air is incredibly thin, crisp and cold. Every breath feels sharp and refreshing. You pull up the ship to Angel Beach, but when you step off the boat, you don't hit sand. You land on island clouds. The ground here is pure white. It feels like stepping onto a massive, firm mattress. You take your boots off and your feet sink just a little bit into the soft, spongy ground. Every step you take has a quiet, satisfying squish to it. You walk off the beach and head into the main residential area. And right away, you see how unique the culture here is. The locals, the Skypians, all have these small white wings on their backs. And as you walk past them, they don't wave or shake hands. They greet each other by saying hessa, while some put their hand against their head and stick 2 fingers up. It's an incredibly welcoming, laid-back community. As you walk down the bouncy cloud streets, you start noticing that nothing here runs on electricity or normal fire. The entire society runs on dials, these special shells that record and release energy. You pass by a street vendor setting up his food cart. Instead of lighting a pile of coal, he just taps a small flat shell on his grill. It's a heat dial, and it instantly starts glowing, cooking up fresh Kai fish right on the spot. The smell of the roasted fish hits you, mixing with the clean air of the sky. Over on the water, you hear a smooth gliding sound. You look over and see a local riding a waver. It looks like a small jet ski, but there's no engine. It's powered entirely by a breath dial that pushes out a steady stream of wind, letting them glide effortlessly across the sea of clouds. It's just a normal afternoon for them. You find a quiet spot near the edge of the beach at a small cafe made entirely out of carved island clouds. Even the chairs are made of clouds, so when you sit down, you just sink into it like a giant, cool pillow. You order a glass of their local specialty, called pumpkin juice. The sun starts to set, turning the entire ocean of white clouds around you into this beautiful, glowing shade of orange and pink. As it gets dark, the locals tap their lamp dials, and the street lights slowly hum to life, glowing with stored sunlight from earlier in the day. Somewhere close by, someone is playing a harp. It's soft, acoustic, and perfectly in tune with the slow, relaxing pace of the island. You lean back in your cloud chair, totally completely relaxed, just listening to the music and watching the sky fade to dark. We are dropping all the way back down from the clouds and sail to the exact halfway point of the Grand Line. Our next stop is Sabaody Archipelago. When your ship pulls up to Sabaody, you realize pretty quickly that it isn't actually an island. There is no dirt or rock anywhere. The whole place is just a massive forest of Yarukiman mangrove trees, growing directly out of the ocean. The roots are so incredibly thick and wide that people just build their entire towns right on top of them. You tie your ship to a giant root and step off. The ground feels a little bit different here. The bark of the roots is smooth, and there is a faint, sweet smell of tree resin in the air. But the craziest part about Sabaody is the bubbles. The mangrove trees naturally secrete this special resin, and as the roots breathe, giant bubbles float up from the ground. Everywhere you look, there are these shimmering, soap-like bubbles just drifting slowly up into the air. You walk deeper into the grove, heading toward the residential areas. Because the mangrove trees are so unbelievably tall, their leaves form this massive canopy that blocks out the harsh, direct sunlight. So down on the ground, it always feels like a lazy, warm afternoon. The light is soft and striped with shadows, making the floating bubbles reflect in pinks, greens, and golds. You see how completely the locals have adapted to living here. A local rides past you on a ponchari. It's basically a bicycle, but instead of tires, it has giant bubbles attached to the wheels. They don't ride on the ground, they just float smoothly about a foot in the air. You pass by a row of small shops carved right into the sides of the tree trunks. Shopkeepers are packing groceries into floating bubble bags, so customers don't have to carry anything heavy. You stop at a small food cart where a vendor is selling fresh fruit, grab a snack, and find a quiet spot to sit down on the edge of a massive curved tree root overlooking the water. Across the ocean, a few groves over, you can see Sabaody Park. The giant ferry wheel is slowly turning against the fading light. Because you are sitting a few groves away, you don't hear any of the crowds or the noise. All you hear is a very faint, nostalgic sound of carnival music drifting across the water on the breeze. You lean back against the bark of the tree, the air is warm, the shade is cool, and you just sit there, watching the bubbles float silently up into the canopy. If you are enjoying the journey so far, please consider subscribing and leave a like on the video. That way I can create more videos like this. We are leaving the warm, tropical shade of Sabaody behind and sail straight into a completely different climate. You can feel the air start to drop rapidly before you even see land. The ocean breeze turns sharp and you can actually see your breath in the air. We are pulling into the permanent winter of Drum Island. Before you step off the ship, you have to throw on the thickest winter coat you own, heavy gloves and a scarf. When you finally step onto the wooden docks, the snow is already up to your knees. You make your way into Bighorn, one of the main villages sitting at the base of the mountains. And right away, you realize this place isn't just some frozen wasteland. It is full of life. The village is made up of these incredibly sturdy wooden cabins with steep slanted roofs so the heavy snow slides right off. Smoke is peacefully puffing out of every single chimney, rising into the grey sky. There are locals everywhere, completely bundled up in giant fur coats. You watch a neighbor scraping the ice off his front steps, waving a thick mittened hand at the people walking by. A group of kids runs past you down the street, throwing snowballs and laughing, with their cheeks completely red from the biting cold. The people of Drum Island are tough, but they really look out for each other. This island is famous across the world for its doctors. As you walk down the snowy street, you can see an older village doctor making a house call. He is trudging through the knee-deep snow, carrying a heavy wooden medicine kit on his back, heading to check on a patient. It is just a normal Tuesday morning for them. You keep walking and look up. Towering over the village are the Drum Rockies. They are these massive, flat-top mountains that look like giant stone cylinders covered in ice. You can actually see the ropeway cable cars slowly moving up the side of the cliffs, carrying supplies and locals up to the villages higher in the peaks. But the absolute best part about visiting a winter island is going inside. You find a local tavern right in the middle of town. You grab the heavy iron handle, pull the thick wooden door open, and step out of the storm. The heat hits you the second you walk in. If you wear glasses, they fog up immediately. The tavern smells incredible. It is a mix of burning pine wood from the massive stone fireplace in the center of the room and huge pots of hot, earthy meat stew cooking in the kitchen. You stomp the snow off your boots and take your heavy coat off, shaking the frost from your shoulders. The place is packed with locals taking a break from the cold. Hunters are sitting at the thick wooden tables, drinking hot cider and laughing loudly. People are sharing bowls of stew, rubbing their hands together near the fire to warm up. It just feels incredibly safe and cozy. You grab a small table right next to a frosted window and order a hot drink. You take your sleeve and wipe a little circle on the foggy glass so you can look outside. The wind has completely died down. Now it is just massive, thick snowflakes falling heavily and silently over the village. It creates that beautiful muffled quiet that you only get during a heavy snowstorm. You just sit there by the window, totally warm, letting the heat of the mug thaw your hands, watching the snow slowly bury the island, while the locals laugh around the fire behind you. We are leaving the freezing winds of Drum Island behind and sail into completely different waters. You can feel the heat radiating off the ocean before the island even comes into view. We are pulling into the massive desert kingdom of Alabasta. When you step off the ship at the port city of Nanohana, the dry, baking heat of the desert hits you instantly. It is a massive shift from the snow, but it is the kind of heat that deeply warms your bones. You don't stay in the crowded port. You rent a giant, yellow Sandora riding lizard, saddle up, and ride out into the endless dunes. The desert is vast and incredibly quiet. For hours, all you see are rolling waves of golden sand under a massive blue sky. But right as the sun begins to set, dipping below the dunes and turning the sky into deep shades of purple and red, you see it. A quiet, hidden oasis village. You ride down into the bowl of the oasis. The temperature immediately drops perfectly as you enter the shade of giant palm trees. The air smells like fresh water and blooming desert flowers. You hop off your lizard and let it drink from the large crystal clear pool of water in the center of the village. The locals here live a slow, peaceful life. You see people wrapped in light, woven robes sitting outside their sandstone houses, smoking flavored tobacco from tall water pipes. The sweet, fruity smoke drifts slowly through the warm evening air. As night falls, the desert gets cold, but the village stays incredibly cozy. Lanterns are lit around the water, casting a dancing reflection on the pool. You walk over to a small open-air market stall where a vendor is cooking over an open flame. You can hear the fat sizzling as he roasts spiced desert meat on wooden skewers. He hands you one, and the rich, peppery smell is incredible. You take your food and walk a little bit away from the center of the village, climbing up onto a flat sandstone roof. You lay back on a woven rug and look up. Because you are in the middle of the desert, miles away from any major city lights, the sky is unbelievable. It is a massive, unbroken blanket of millions of stars. You just lay there on the warm stone, completely still, watching the stars shine over the Grand Line. We are leaving the quiet desert nights of Alabasta behind and sail into a completely different kind of heat. We are heading to a place that is totally untouched by time. Our next stop is Little Garden. When you drop the anchor, there are no wooden docks to tie up to. There is no town or village greeting you. You just row a small boat up to a thick, muddy riverbank. The moment you step off, the air hits you. It is not the dry, baking heat of the desert anymore. It is incredibly heavy and humid. It feels exactly like walking into a massive, ancient greenhouse. You walk up to the bank, and immediately you realize the scale of this place is completely wrong. You walk past a normal-looking fern, but the leaves are the size of a 2-story house. The trees don't look like regular wood. They look prehistoric, towering hundreds of feet into the sky. You push your way through some giant, soft leaves and walk deeper into the jungle. Because the plants are so massive, they block out a lot of the direct sunlight, casting this deep, cool green shadow over the ground. There are no human voices here. No taverns, no shops, no ringing bells. It is just raw, pure nature. You follow the sound of the water until you find a wide, slow-moving river cutting through the deep jungle. You find a dry spot right on the edge of the bank, sitting down on the massive, mossy root of an ancient tree. It is unbelievably peaceful. You pull out a canteen of water, take a long drink, and just watch the murky water flow by. The heat makes you feel lazy, and you just let your shoulders drop, resting your head back against the giant tree trunk. As you are sitting there, with your eyes closed, you start to feel something. It isn't a sound at first. It is a very faint, rhythmic vibration traveling through the wood you are leaning against. You open your eyes and look out over the tree line miles in the distance. Over the top of the canopy, you see the massive long neck of a brachiosaurus, just slowly reaching up to eat leaves of the tallest branches. It isn't scary, it is just incredibly fascinating. You just sit there on the root, feeling completely tiny in this giant world, listening to the slow heartbeat of an island stuck completely in the past. We are leaving the heavy, prehistoric humidity of Little Garden behind and sail into a much cooler, drier evening breeze. As you steer the ship down a narrow waterway, Massive, towering shadows loom on both sides of you. When you look up, you see them. Giant mountains shaped exactly like colossal cacti, complete with massive stone needles sticking out of them. Our next stop is Whiskey Peak. This island doesn't greet you with silence, but it greets you with a roaring, massive celebration. You tie your ship up to the wooden docks and step off into the cool canyon air. The town is built right into the valley between the Cactus Mountains, and the atmosphere is incredibly warm and infectious. There are giant bonfires burning in the center of the streets, casting a bright, flickering orange light over the stone buildings. Long wooden tables are set up everywhere, completely covered in massive barrels of ale, wheels of cheese, and huge plates of roasted meat. The locals are incredibly welcoming. A group of them grabs you by the arm, laughing, and pulls you over to one of the tables. A bartender with a massive smile slams a heavy, oversized wooden mug filled to the brim with cold, foaming ale right into your hand. The smell is amazing. It's a mix of wood smoke from the bonfires, the sharp, sweet scent of the ale, and the rich, savory smell of meat roasting on open spits. But as fun as the center of the party is, it is a little loud. So, you take your massive wooden mug and slowly make your way toward the edge of the town. You walk up a short flight of stone steps to a quiet, elevated wooden balcony that looks back down over the main square. You lean your arms against the wooden railing and take a long, cold drink of the ale. From up here, the chaotic noise of the party blends perfectly into a warm, comfortable hum. You can feel the heat of the massive bonfires radiating up to the balcony, perfectly balancing out the cool, desert canyon wind blowing through the valley. You just stand there on the balcony, totally relaxed, letting the music and the warmth of the town wash over you, while the giant Cactus Mountains are cast shadow under the moonlight. We are leaving the roaring bonfires and loud music of Whiskey Peak behind, sailing into waters that are completely still. The ocean waves just seems to stop. The air gets incredibly damp, and a massive, unnaturally thick wall of fog rolls over the deck of your ship. We have entered the Florian Triangle. As you drift blindly through the white mist, a massive shadow looms overhead. You aren't pulling up to a natural island this time. You are docking at Thriller Bark, the largest pirate ship in the world, so incredibly huge that it holds an entire island inside its walls. You drop your anchor and step off your ship onto the dirt. The atmosphere instantly shifts into a permanent, spooky autumn midnight. You walk into the dead woods. The trees here are completely stripped of their leaves, with their twisted black branches reaching up into the dark purple sky. The ground is covered in a thick layer of dry, dead leaves and patchy gray grass. Every step you take breaks the absolute silence of the forest. The air smells like damp earth, old rain, and a faint hint of burning wax. It is undeniably spooky, but there is no danger tonight. It just feels like walking through the ultimate immersive Halloween night. You make your way through the windy, foggy graveyard until you see a mansion. It is a colossal Gothic stone castle with towering spires and tall arched glass windows. It is freezing outside in the fog, so you walk up to the massive stone steps and grab the heavy, cold iron ring of the front door. You pull it open with a loud, echoing groan of ancient wood and step inside, pushing the heavy door shut behind you. Instantly, the damp cold is cut off. You wander down a long dark hallway lit only by floating ghost lanterns until you find a quiet, abandoned study. It is a beautiful, dusty Victorian room. The walls are lined with floor-to-ceiling bookshelves filled with leather-bound books, with heavy, dark, red velvet curtains hanging over the tall windows. There is a massive stone fireplace against the wall. You gather some old, dry wood from a basket, strike a match, and toss it in. The orange light floods the dark room, casting dancing shadows over the bookshelves. You dust off a massive, high-backed leather chair right in front of the fire and sink into it, and the leather groans softly under your weight. Outside, you can hear the freezing wind whipping against the massive glass windows, but inside the study, you are completely safe, wrapped up in the dry heat of the fire. You just sit back in the leather chair, pulling a thick woolen blanket over your knees. You watch the embers glow and pop, completely hidden away in the haunted, foggy shadows of the Grand Line. The world Oda has created is massive, and there are still so many incredible locations we haven't seen yet. If you have any suggestions for a future video, please let me know in the comments down below. And if you like this type of content, please leave a like on the video and subscribe to the channel. That way you don't miss out on future videos. Take it easy, and I will see you in the next one.